Today I've got the absolute pleasure of being able to delve into Colin Machlachlan's mindset, ex-SAS sergeant and star of SAS Who Dares Wins. Colin, let me just find out what you do on a morning. What is your morning ritual? And has it got any better? Has it got any worse since you left the SAS?
I guess every morning you get up, and it depends on the environment, your state of mind. And for me, I try not to have rituals, because those type of things, if you miss it one day, sometimes that can affect your mindset and stuff. So no, I get up and I remember what I'm doing for the day, and generally just try and set those little mini goals that get you through those little things that I've got to achieve today by the time I wake up tomorrow.
There's one thing that I've started doing very recently, and that's to make my bed. For years and years I've not made my bed. I never thought it important, but they say that if you accomplish one task at the start of your day, and this you've probably heard this, that you're on your way to accomplishing a lot more going on. Is that something you do?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think a lot of people say that your mental state and your goals and stuff, a lot can be replicated by your surroundings. So people look at someone's house, their bedroom, their bed, and that's almost a direct relation to how their mindset is. So if they get up in the morning, they make their bed, they set their stall out for the day, it's almost that's their kind of path in their mindset, and it's organised and there's a clear set, and little things like that, just they make a lot of difference.
I mean, you've probably been asked this so many times before. What is it? How did you get recruited for the SAS, and what did you have to go through? I mean, we've seen on the television show that the rigmarole that you have to go through, but to get to that stage, how do you get to that stage to be selected?
Yeah, so I think what people forget is that you're a volunteer, so you always start off in the military, whether you're Army, Air Force, Navy, and then you volunteer. You put your papers in to say, I want to try SF selection, and you'll go on some kind of SF prep course. But a lot of that's mindset. You want to be the best you can be. So whether you're a young kid throwing a ball around and you aspire to be in the Leeds Rhinos, or whether you're in the army and you think one day I'm going to be in the special forces, you set those goals and you work towards them.
I imagine like every SAS member would have to be a leader. So obviously you have different ranks and stuff, but I imagine everyone would have to be a leader in some sort of way. What defines a leader to you?
Yeah, it's a good question, and you're absolutely right. Every single member within that team is a leader just by definition, and they all bring different mindsets and different skills accordingly, and we tailor every single mission we do depending on the individual's skills. So we might need a medic or a demolition or a sniper or a linguist. So it's kind of similar to that. For me, leaders are people that can bring out the best in everybody as a team, and that encompasses a whole load of things: leading by example, making big decisions, communications, the whole 9 yards. Exactly what it takes to be a captain out in the field.
Right, and obviously tailored into that, there's the element of fear. I mean, you guys will have a massive difference in fear and how you deal with it. I suppose it's relative to what everyday people go through, in life, and making decisions and worrying about what to say or what to do. How do you deal with fear? How do you treat it, and how do you overcome it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think my first piece of advice for that would be that always remember that you're the gatekeeper for your own emotion. I can't make you sad or angry or happy. Only you can do that. So no one can control my emotions. Only I can control that. So it doesn't matter what happens on the outside world. I'm always ultimately the gatekeeper for how I feel. And that's important, because once you realize that you've got ownership of your own emotions, it's easier to control. And we're human beings. We get scared as the same as anyone else. I hear those lead wasps flinging past my ear, and I'm as scared as anybody else. The difference is I then can manage it and deal with it.
Colin, obviously you spoke about when you got captured in Iraq. Is there a sort of vision that you've got there as like either the scariest moment for what you had to go through in that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people say when you were captured, I take it the point where you were having those mock executions, that was the scariest. And bizarrely, for me it wasn't. For me, the scariest part was when order broke down. So while somebody was in charge and he was telling people what to do, ironically, I felt safer when they started fighting between themselves and it was a mob mentality, that's when I felt most vulnerable, because it was kind of all bets are off. I could be kind of torn limb from limb.
So they were they had no order, and they could decide what to do, really, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's when I felt the most vulnerable. That's probably the point I was most scared at that point.
And these mock executions, did they have a gun to your head, and did they pull the actual trigger when they did them?
Yeah, so at that point I'd be naked, blindfold, handcuffed against the wall. My compadre was in the room opposite. I could hear what was going on there, and then every now and again they would just press the trigger. And I think the first time I would assume that it was that the weapon was faulty. After it had happened a few times, I kind of clicked on it was.
What physical feeling did you get, and like what thoughts ran through your head when that happened?
You almost force yourself to think about things that you think you should be thinking about, so family and the person next door. And for me, I always thought about the guy I was with, because I was the commander on that mission and I was responsible for the guy on the other side. So even though I was scared about my own life, I was always conscious there was a guy next door and I was responsible for him, and that was always at the forefront of my mind. As it is out there, you're responsible for the guys under you. Don't want to see anyone get hurt, so you want to keep that core.
So very selfless thoughts, really, and because you were obviously a sergeant and stuff, you kind of felt like you had a role to protect him.
Absolutely, and I think that becomes relevant when there was opportunities to escape, because I knew if I escaped I was leaving him behind, so that was never really an option for me. I wouldn't have been happy getting myself out of there knowing he was still in, so I stayed there, and you kind of got to stand by your convictions, and we talked about leaderships. That's one of those things.
We had a very big bit of a spiel from Jamie Jones Buchanan today about overcoming adversity and all the different things that goes in with that, and obviously your case is a massive scenario and something that a lot of us would never even dream of, or think that we're going to be in that position. Do you think now that you're in such a much of a better position to have gone through that?
Definitely. I think before you come through a period like that, whether it's stuff going on with the family, whether it's stuff physically with yourself, whether it's stuff you've seen, it creates so much strength through that, that mental strength that comes with having gone through that. If you've come through that and you've come through, unscathed, you build that resilience, and you see that in the military. Guys that have done 1 or 2 operational tours, by the time they come to their 3rd and 4th tour, they have that physical robustness, they have that resilience mentally, and it's the same with guys like yourself, JGB, guys that have been through various different things. That automatically creates this resilience, this kind of attitude that's you can't teach.
And obviously the Pilgrim is set to come out soon. What kind of themes and stuff are people going to expect in that?
Yeah, traditionally you would think an autobiography of an ex-SAS guy would be bombs and bullets and stuff like that. This is slightly different. It talks about my childhood and the crossover with the NSPCC, and we talked about resilience earlier. That you create that resilience through the environment you're raised in. So for me, I talk about when I was captured in Iraq, and when I was that wasn't the first time I'd been naked and hungry in a room. I'd been beaten. That had happened before in my childhood. So it creates that resilience, that protection, that you can protect yourself when these things happen. And it's no coincidence we try and replicate that when we do selection. So we have an interrogation phase, escape and evasion, so that it's not the first time it happens to these guys. So that shock effect isn't there, and we've built a kind of wall to protect ourselves against it. So it's got a little bit of that, and it's obviously got some almost Billy Connolly type adventures in my first unit, Scottish Infantry unit, the Royal Scots. Then it's got some quite high profile operations, as you would expect in the SAS, and kind of finishes with all the kind of post life, whether it's security, university or TV work.